Ho ho ho, welcome to the 2A Roundup Christmas special. Have you ever wondered if Kevin from Home Alone acted in self-defense properly? What about John Mcclane from Die Hard? All of this and more on today's 2A Roundup. Hello, my name is attorney Rachel Moss and I'm here with attorneys Emma Wittmann and Brittany LaBerry. We are so excited to do our first ever Christmas special for 2A Roundup. We have a lot of videos we're going to be diving into today, but I think Brittany's going to take us away with the first one.
Let's start with one of my favorite Christmas movies, which is Home Alone. So to kind of set the scene before we dive into the clip that we're going to watch two clips. Now there are so many different clips we could talk about in this movie, but let's talk about the background of what happens in the movie. So Kevin, the little child in the movie, actually overhears the robbers, Marv and Harry's, plan to come back to the house and rob the house later that day. So there's a clip in the movie where they are outside of Kevin's house and they say, we're going to come back at 9 p.m. tonight. Kids are afraid of the dark. Let's come back and that's when we'll do it. And then the other robber says, well, I don't know. Should we? There is a kid home. And he says, no, that's why we got into this business and why we're really focusing on this street is because of this house, right? We got to do it. That's the background of what happens in the movie before this clip. So let's look at the clip and then we will analyze it.
I'm so excited.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
So cute.
Merry Christmas, little fella. We know that you're in there and that you're all alone.
Yeah, come on, kid, open up. It's Santa Claus and his elf.
We're not gonna hurt you.
No. Got some nice presents for you.
Be a good little fella now and open the door.
Shoot! What? 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 What happened?
Get that little... Hello. Yes! Yes!
The little jerk is armed! That's it!
I love this movie so much.
I do too. I can't help
It's
but laugh.
so funny.
Okay, so let's talk about that, right? So we talked about earlier what happens before. He said that they were going to come back at 9 p.m. Now, earlier in the movie, Kevin could not have acted in that moment, right? Because it wasn't imminent. We talk about imminency a lot in, our videos and just in self-defense as general as one of the principles that you have to make sure, right? That you're not responding to a threat in the future. It has to be imminent. But in this case, they came back. It looks like 9 p.m. It's dark. He was armed with non-deadly force. And they say, hey, open up. We know that you're alone.
We know that you're in there and that you're all alone.
Like we talked about earlier, imminency is one of the main factors that we look to when analyzing a self-defense incident or use of force. You cannot respond to a threat in the future. It has to be imminent. If you do not use that force that you want to use, something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, and you raised a great point. In the beginning of the movie, not shown in this clip, they specifically say, we want to burglarize this house at 9 p.m. tonight. So even though Kevin heard it earlier in the day, at that point in time when he hears this statement about a future threat, he's not yet justified in using any type of self-defense. However, if they do come back at 9 p.m., which in the clip we know that they do, that's when the level of imminency or the immediate threat is now in play. So always keep in mind that you can't respond to a future threat later in the day, but if it's imminent right in front of your face and they are about to act and aggress against you, that's when you can then respond.
And we always talk about too, mere words are not enough to, use self-defense. It has to be some sort of action. In this case too, their words, right? They were going to come back and burglarize the house. At that point, it was just words, but now we see in the movie that they actually did come back. That's action, right? We could consider that as well.
And it's important to note that they don't actually have to wait for someone to complete the act of burglary. So if Kevin hears an imminent threat of burglary, he doesn't have to wait for them to actually complete the act. But as soon as he sees some sort of indication that they are going to do the burglary, which is them showing up at 9 p.m. and pretty obviously trying to manipulate Kevin into letting them in the house, that's a situation where now Kevin has some sort of justification here. As criminal defense attorneys, anytime a case is charged, we have to disclose defenses to the other side. And if I was Kevin's attorney in this case, there are definitely a few different types of defenses I would disclose to the other side. I think I would disclose self-defense, defense of property, defense of a dwelling, and then also that he was acting in crime prevention, preventing a burglary. And the crime prevention statute is something that we have in Arizona where we're all licensed, but there's usually a similar type of statute in most other states. And what the crime prevention statute does is if you reasonably believe that a crime is about to occur, and there's some evidence, like in this case, that that crime is about to occur, if you act reasonably to stop that crime, you can be justified in doing so. Every state has different crimes that are allowed in their crime prevention statute, but in Arizona, for example, burglary is one of those crimes that you can use even deadly physical force to prevent. So here I would argue that Kevin's BB gun is probably closer to ordinary physical force rather than deadly physical force. But if that had been a real rifle, I think Kevin would have been justified.
Now, the first shot was against Harry, and like you mentioned earlier, it was before they entered the home. They did say, hey, let us in, right, so we can see their intent. But like you argued earlier, you don't have to complete the burglary or enter before you use physical force, right? In this case, I would argue, like you said, it was non-lethal force, and you can defend your premise with non-lethal force. And also, like you said, at least in Arizona, you could use deadly physical force to prevent a burglary. So in this case, I would argue if I was Kevin's attorney in a pre-charge matter that this absolutely should not be charged and that his actions were justified under the law. Even the second shot, I would argue, is even more defensible than the first. And that's because he actually entered. So you don't have to enter, through a window or anything like that. You don't have to have your whole body enter. It is just a portion of your body enter with the intent to commit that felony. And he did. He went through the doggy door. It doesn't matter if it was his hand, his leg, whatever it was, it does qualify because he did enter.
I think Kevin crushed it here with his self-defense. But I think another defense we mentioned was defense of a dwelling. And I know this happened in Illinois, your homeland, Brittany, and actually specifically in Chicago. And I know Illinois has a specific statute for use of force in defense of a dwelling. And I can just read out a portion of it, that someone is justified in using force when and to the extent he reasonably believes it's necessary to prevent or terminate such others' unlawful entry into or attack upon a dwelling. So I think here we see Harry and Marv's attempt to make an unlawful entry. Maybe later on we could call it an attack also, but an unlawful entry into Kevin's dwelling. So here Kevin was definitely justified, and that's for ordinary physical force. But Illinois does go a step further and say you can only use deadly physical force to protect your dwelling if the entry is violent, which at this point I wouldn't say they've shown evidence of a violent entry. However, you can also use deadly physical force if such force is necessary to prevent a felony occurring within that dwelling. So here, I think, again, there's another way that Kevin would have been justified in using deadly physical force and preventing them from entering, because we do know their plans to commit burglary. Kevin knows those plans. He heard them. So since he knows about that, he can then use deadly physical force to prevent that felony from occurring. So lucky for Harry and Marv that Kevin didn't have a real rifle, because Kevin would have been justified in using it.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was a child, I didn't think about these things, but it was
After watching Home Alone, did you ever want to build a trap to protect your home?
Yeah, I thought about it. Let's turn to another video from Home Alone as well. We're going to talk about defense of third parties. This is later in the movie. At the end of it, there is a happy ending in this movie, spoiler alert. But if you haven't seen it, watch it before you continue watching this video.
Yeah, get on it if you haven't watched Home Alone yet. Okay, here we go.
Or shove a nail through his foot.
First thing I'm gonna do is bite off every one of these little fingers, one at a time.
Come on, let's get you home.
First of all, that scene always scared me as a kid. I always thought he was actually going to bite off Kevin's finger.
You could have. Okay, so let's talk about that scene. First, before that scene, it didn't get to be shown in this clip, but he was running. You could see Kevin running into the house, and that's when the neighbor saw him. You could see Kevin, he cannot leave, right? He can't run away, and he's clipped to the coat hanger on his sweater, and he's saying, I'm going to bite off all these fingers, and they're definitely threatening him, right? And that's when the neighbor saves him. He comes in with the shovel. Now, in this case, he can definitely use defensive third parties because they're aggressing against Kevin. Now, what he uses is a shovel. I would say that's absolutely reasonable. I would say that's not deadly force. Now, some people can say maybe it could be deadly force because it is metal. They did hit him over the head. Kind of could, relate to kind of a hammer type situation. But I would argue as the neighbor's counsel that it wasn't deadly physical force. But even if it was deadly physical force, do you guys think that he would be justified in using that?
I think he would be justified in using deadly physical force if you consider the shovel to be deadly physical force. Because here we see Harry threatening to bite off Kevin's fingers. And I don't know about you, but I would consider that to be a serious physical injury if my fingers were bit off. And so when you apply the defense of a third party defense, you have to look at the person being attacked and you almost place yourselves into their shoes. Would they be justified in using self-defense? And there, Kevin, facing an imminent risk of serious physical injury, would be justified in using deadly physical force against Harry if he had the means to do so. So then we can transfer that to the neighbor who came in with a shovel. He would have been justified in using deadly physical force. I think that is a hard call, though, to determine if a shovel is deadly physical force or not. But in this case, I think it doesn't really matter because I think he'd be justified either way.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you, but I think even looking at it from the perspective of how are we going to defend this case, the fact that he opted for something that is not deadly physical force, I think makes his defense even that much stronger.
Mm-hmm. And he only used as much force as necessary to neutralize the situation. He didn't hit him with the shovel and then keep wailing on him after that. He hit him with the shovel, he fell down, he rescued Kevin and got out of there. Another thing that just makes it easier for us to justify that.
Absolutely. And if you watch our Halloween special, we analyzed different Halloween movies. And in the Michael Myers scene, he shot the aggressor and he shot him multiple times, many times. And so this is a perfect example of the opposite of where he only used the force necessary and no more than that. He hit him once, fell on the floor, hit the other guy, fell on the floor, and then got out of there like you said. So 10 out of 10, great job, Shovel Sam. You use, proportional force in this case.
Such a great movie, and there's so many other clips we could cover, but should we pivot and watch a couple more clips from different movies?
Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to show you two clips from two different movies. One is from A Christmas Story, and one is from Elf. So both of these have a common theme to them. Keep your self-defense hat on, and let's see if you can catch on to what we're about to talk about.
Listen, jerk, when I tell you to come, you better come. What, are you gonna cry now? Come on, cry, baby, cry for me. Come on, cry.
Deep in the recesses of my brain, a tiny red-hot little flame began to grow. Something had happened. A fuse blew, and I had gone out of my skull.
All right, now let's take a look at the elf scene.
I didn't know you had elves working here.
Boy, you're hilarious, my friend.
He doesn't. Get back to the story, please.
So, on the cover above the title.
Does Santa know that you left the workshop?
We're all laughing our heads off.
Did you have to borrow a reindeer to get down here?
Buddy, go back to the basement.
Hey, Jackweed, I get more action in a week than you've had your entire life. I've got houses in LA, Paris, and Vail.
Oh.
Each one of them with a 70-inch plasma screen. So I suggest you wipe that stupid smile off your face before I come over there and smack it off. You feeling strong, my friend? Call me Elf one more time.
He's an angry elf. Look at you! Ow! Hey, what? I wasn't ready for that.
Call me elf one more time. Call me elf.
You're an elf.
He thinks he's an elf. Listen, Miles. Listen, Miles.
He must be a South Pole elf.
All right, so the common theme between these two is verbal provocation. So if you guessed it, great job. So keep in mind there are certain circumstances where we cannot assert self-defense. And one of those is verbal provocation alone. So you cannot use physical force against another in response to their verbal provocation. So we saw with the first clip of Christmas Story, Ralphie is facing the bully. The bully is clearly trying to get some type of response out of him. The name calling, definitely trying to provoke him. And then Ralphie finally reaches his boiling point, and that's when he starts swinging. He is not justified in exercising physical force against the bully. Even though the bully was saying terrible things to him, we would not be able to assert self-defense on his behalf.
Same thing with Miles, right? Miles also was unable to use self-defense in that case against Buddy the Elf. And it's really good to kind of remember these things during the holidays, right? Every family gets a little tension at least some point in the year, and a lot of that happens at the holidays. So if Uncle Joe or, Aunt Sally is, saying bad things, remember you cannot turn to violence and claim self-defense.
That is so true. However, I can't lie, I was kind of rooting for Ralphie and Miles in both clips. This might be one of those situations where we use jury nullification if we're on their jury.
Or we could also talk about mitigation, right?
That's true.
Miles, I mean, how hard that must be for him to, I'm sure get those comments all the time because of his height. And, we could turn to other types of things, but unfortunately we would be unable to use self-defense.
So far it's looking like Kevin's use of self-defense good, but unfortunately Miles and Ralphie have some work to do.
Yeah.
All right, we have another clip queued up from my personal favorite Christmas movie, Four Christmases. Let's take a look.
These boundaries are not to be crossed. And if they are crossed, there's going to be real consequences to that. Thank you.
Welcome to the Octagon, son! Ow! Ow! Don't! Ow! Stop it, please! Take it! Ow! What's happening?
Come on, tag us in.
Oh, no, you boys get hurt, I'll lose custody again.
Tag him in. Come on, tag us in.
No. Merry Christmas.
Google me! What? Google me! You might want to look me up sometime, Barbara!
Stop!
All right, so in this movie, we see Vince Vaughn, who is Brad, and he is going around to 4 different Christmases on the same day, 2 for his parents and 2 for his wife's parents. And so at this scene, they are at his dad's house, and those are his 2 brothers who decide to basically engage in some WWE style fighting against him. We see that Brad is trying to lay some boundaries and ground rules down for how they're going to act as adults and no longer children. However, his boundaries that he lays down are not respected, and the brothers immediately start trying to fight him, drag him down the small flight of stairs, and then tag in the 2 young boys. So one thing that I think we probably will all just flat out agree on, he would be definitely justified in trying to respond with ordinary physical force. And another thing to talk about is proportionality. So we talked about this briefly, especially in other videos, making sure whatever type of physical force you are using to stop the threat is proportional to what is being used against you. So whether that's looking at, okay, they're not using any items, ordinary items, or even a firearm or a knife, but they're using just their person, their fists, their bodies. So he would be justified in definitely trying to use his fists or any type of response back. Now, one thing I think we should talk about is the fact that initially it's 2-on-1 and then becomes almost 3 or 4-on-1 if you count the children when they join in as well. So he might be justified in using something more than just a physical response with his fists at that point in order to deter the threat. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think anytime there's a situation where it's 2, 3, 4-on-1, it definitely increases the type of force that you're able to use in response. Because I think it makes sense that if you're facing one person who's just using their fist, that would be ordinary physical force. But if someone's able to hold you down and punch you, and maybe 2 people hold you down while another 2 are punching and kicking you, that definitely means you're more at risk of serious physical injury or death. So every situation, it's going to be unique and dependent on those specific facts. However, this is one where at this point, just because they're children, I don't think it arose to the level of these children being able to enact deadly physical force upon him towards the end. But somewhere in the middle there, where it was the 2 brothers tag teaming, slamming him to the ground, I think he was at risk of some serious physical injury there. So it's a close call, but I think I could do well as Vince Vaughn's lawyer here.
Absolutely. And his dad or his wife could have also stepped in to help him, and they could have claimed, defensive third parties. We don't see that in this video. They're just kind of laughing.
That
at least
would have
the
been
dad
nice.
was. Yeah,
You could have used it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that takes us to our last Christmas clip of the day. And we're going to answer the age-old question, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? But first, we're going to watch this clip. If you haven't seen Die Hard before, Die Hard is a film about a man, John Mcclane, going to his wife's Christmas party. So they're currently separated. He's trying to win her back over. So he's going to this holiday party at a big corporation, and a German terrorist villain, Hans Gruber, has taken over the building and is enacting his terrorist plot. He's taken a ton of people hostage here. John Mcclane is there, and he's ready to step into action, and he starts fighting off the terrorists. So that's the clip we're going to see here. So here we have an example of deadly physical force in a Christmas movie. So John Mcclane at this point is up on the roof fighting off the terrorists. And you can see the terrorists are the ones to initiate the deadly physical force against John. They have these giant guns. They're shooting at John, and John returns fire after he is fired at. So John is facing deadly physical force, and he acts proportionally to that imminent deadly physical force by responding with his own firearm. And you can even see at some points it's looking like John Mcclane is even attempting to retreat away from the deadly fire. And in certain states you have that duty to retreat. In certain states you're able to stand your ground. But here, I think John was facing an imminent threat to his life where even if he had a duty to retreat, I don't think he would have been able to do so necessarily in safety. So the fact that he was trying to retreat, I think would also make our job easier in defending him, that he was just trying to defend himself and others rather than setting out to kill someone that day. But I think no matter what here, this is a clear case of using deadly physical force properly.
Absolutely. Good job, John Mcclane.
So with that, do you think Die Hard is a Christmas movie, Emma?
I feel like we're going to have to say yes. It happens at Christmas time, Christmas party. I know this is a controversial topic for a lot of people, but I'm going to go with yes.
What about you, Brittany?
When I think of Christmas, I think of like Santa Claus and Home Alone and Elf and Christmas Story, and that just doesn't fit the vibe of my Christmas movie preferences, so I'm going to say no.
Ooh, I'll tie break it. I'm with Emma here. It happened on Christmas Eve and Christmas. He brought a Christmas gift to the party. There were holiday decorations all around. I bet there was some holiday cheer in there somewhere in between the violent gunshots. But I think Die Hard is a Christmas movie. If you disagree with us, get in the comments. We want to hear what you think. And we want to hear what you think about all of these clips. Was Kevin acting in good self-defense? What about Miles? What about Buddy? What about John Mcclane? Let us know what you think in the comments below. I think this is an awesome first ever 2A Roundup Christmas special. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave us a comment here. And you can also check us out on attorneysforfreedom.com. You can get to know our team there and get to know what kind of cases we take. You can also check us out on attorneysonretainer.us. Attorneys on Retainer is a self-defense protection program where if you find yourself in a self-defense incident and you're a member of our program, you could have all your legal fees covered.
If you like this video, you know what to do by now. Like, comment, share, and subscribe.
Thanks for watching this episode of 2A Roundup. Until next time, cheers.
Cheers.